right, everyone. Gerard Scarpaci here for the fifth in the series of 6 of professionals who practice, and that's a great name for me. I've been practicing a lot this week, getting ready for today's lesson, which is about undercutting to create different Pixie variations. You can see in the background here I've used a few of my pivot point mannequins, the Diane, which is the same one that I'm working on here, and then the Elise. They both have undercuts, very similar to this one. There's slight differences, and we'll talk about them. But let's get into what I'm doing here. You can see I've got a horseshoe section through the top. It curves with the contour of the head, and it's below the round of the head, deliberately. You know, when you're trying to decide about your undercut, the most important thing is how much are you going to undercut? So to me, the first question that I ask is it going to be below the round, on the round, or above the round? And that'll let you know how much hair is left over at the top. Here, by being below the round, you know, I've still got a considerable amount of hair on the top to shape, which is important for the look I'm going for. If I go a bit higher, that means I've got less hair. I mean, in simplest terms, there's other things to consider, but that's the first thing I think about. How much hair do you need on top to create your shape? Now you can see I'm using the razor, which I do a lot. And the reason why I like it on short hair is because it gives this perfect grown-in texture just in one go. I always feel like if I get my stroke and my engagement just right, I don't have to do a lot of refinement to create a soft texture. So let's talk about that. I'm working with diagonal back sections, good even tension. I see the hair fall away, and I go in with what I call a bias blade. And as I lay into it, I go flatter and flatter. The razoring towards the bottom gets a bit more aggressive. But remember that hair is very, very short at the bottom, and I want it very, very soft. And I don't mind if it's a little bit kind of shattered. I kind of want it shattered on the very bottom. So that's some of the most aggressive razoring that I ever do, is right down in here on very short hair when I use the flat of the blade. And you can see, I like to think of this texture almost like a shag carpet, and I mean that in a cool way. You've got all these different little lengths, short and long, mixed in together. Okay, continuing to move through with my diagonal back sections that are kind of orbiting the head shape, over-directing forward to the previous to build a little bit more roundness and weight into the cut as it goes back, holding the hair slightly down, and in the back of the head here, my fingers are a little bit closer towards the bottom than they are at the top. You'll notice, as I get in short and close, I peel away as I cut. That allows me to get in really close with the razor in a safe way. So thanks to everyone that's joining us. Hopefully we're getting the word out there about great education and using great educational tools. Today we're working on number 5 in a series of 6 with our partners Pivot Point, focused on using great educational tools to practice your craft, because we believe that no matter how long you've been doing this and how good you are, you always have to keep practicing.
All right, I would just like to say hello and welcome. This is Kelly from Behind the Camera with you guys today. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Delilah had a question. Would you cut curly hair with razor? Why or why not?
You know what, Delilah? That's a great question, and that's a beautiful name. I love that name. Delilah, I cut all types of hair with the razor. If you look on my Instagram today, funny that you mentioned that, I just posted a picture of quite curly hair that I cut with the razor. Now again, when learning about the razor, there are different ways to rotate it. What I wouldn't do on curly hair is what I'm doing right now. Cut with the blade almost flat, because it would really disrupt the curl pattern and almost make it frizz. I only do that when the hair is going to be really short, and I want it to have this kind of really messed up texture. If I was cutting curly hair, I'd do what I call edge cutting, which, you know, has more similarity to scissor cutting, to be honest with you. But I also want you to remember, it's not the tool that you're using, it's you. It's your understanding. You can make anything work. You can make a scissor work like a razor. You can make a clipper work like a scissor. It's up to you to understand the tools. So you can see I'm crossing over the center back, and that'll complete the first half of this undercut. Technically, it's a round graduation, a kind of a flatter graduation, because it's kind of head hugging. And it starts off a bit flatter in the temples, which we'll talk about in a minute when we get to the second side. But look at that beautiful texture. That's what it's really all about to me. Now, in terms of these mannequins, I'm sure many of you guys have learned and practiced on mannequins before. And one of the challenges can be, when cutting short, if it's not a high quality mannequin, it can get kind of ridiculous. The hair can just stick out straight. The hairlines aren't real. But with the pivot point mannequins, that extra attention to how they put the hair in allows it to lay down like real hair. And then if you learn about the different textures on the mannequins, like the Diane has a beautiful amount of bend to it. So it can be cut down nice and short, and you can get really great lessons out of it. So I recommend you go to pivot-point.com and check out their store, or actually they have the Pivot Point shop. It's even easier to remember, pivotpointshop.com, and then you can really kind of check them out, and they go into all the details. Okay, now I'm going to start the undercut on the second side. I have to reverse my hand position now. That's the same as geometric precision cutting. I'm going to hold the hair down at about 45 degrees and forward about one section. I'm going to come in with my hand square because I don't want this to build up a lot of weight. Starting with the bias on the heel and then laying in flatter and flatter as I go down. The real trick here, for me, is it has to take a while to cut through. If it cuts off really quickly, it's going to be too blunt. The whole idea for me of using the razor this way is to get lots of variation in the length. So there's short and long pieces all mixed in together.
Cheryl wanted to know about which razor you recommend.
This is the Hairbrained Pro razor. It uses feather plie blades. We'll have them available in May. It's handmade in Detroit by American craftsmen, wood craftsmen, and metalsmiths. And we're taking our first delivery in May. So keep your eyes peeled. Visit hairbrained.pro to see the new Hairbrained.pro razor, which takes feather plie blades.
Just take a minute and say thanks to everyone who's watching. Christian, Dana, Kim Moore, everyone out there. Thanks for tuning in.
Kim Moore, my old friend Kim. Kim's doing so well. She's educating out there. She's made a great system. Head Shape Matters. I hope you guys check it out. I love Kim from back in the days when we were Aveda educators together, and so happy for her success. And we got to get you on a HB Live someday, Kim. If you're out there, send me a message. Okay, down and forward into the previous section. My hand is more square because I don't want this to end up, especially in the temple, too stacked looking. So it's what we call flat graduation. Talking about head position and head shape, notice the head's tilted away from me. So right away that's going to make me build up more weight. So if the head is tilted and my fingers are angled, it's going to look really wedgy. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of finding the balance, understanding the head position and how you're working with it. Coming through into the back here, I'll just use one of these little YS Park M clips. It's a great working clip to hold that hair out of the way. Down and forward. Hand is a bit more of a square angle. Now if I do tuck the knuckles in anywhere, it's down here because we want to sit this in shorter towards the bottom, and I just peel that hair away. I think sometimes there's, kind of the myth that you don't need to work clean with razor cutting. I disagree. I think you almost have to work cleaner because the razor cuts in such a soft way. If your sectioning is really messy and not deliberate, for me, and again, I can't speak for everyone, I find that the haircuts just become too blown out and they lose definition.
Delilah was wondering how many haircuts can you do with the razor, and can you talk about changing it? And
yeah, so Delilah, first off, with this blade, the feather plie blade, I think you can get 2 to 3 haircuts out of it before you really feel the blade start to dull. I personally like a new blade for every single haircut because I like the sharpness. I want to be in control. And based on my pressure, I like to determine how much hair is coming off or staying on the hair. So I use a new blade for every single haircut. In terms of, I did a series. Again, if you're joining us here on Facebook, you've been able to find the Hairbrained Facebook page. If you go into our video section, I did a whole series called Razorcraft. There's about 3 or 4 videos where I go over how to hold the razor, all the fundamentals about stroke and all the things I've been talking about with rotation, how to change the blades. So go there and just go right on the first video in Razorcraft, which was, I believe, a one length razor cut. And I spend the first few minutes going over all of that.
Katie is here with us from the UK, and she's wondering if she can buy our blades. I believe so, Katie. Yes.
Yeah, the blades are available on hairbrained.pro. And
yes.
we also sell the feather razor, feather plie razor, which is a folding razor. And soon in May we'll be introducing this version, this customized version with the beautiful wood handle and the graceful curve for comfort.
Yes, Delilah, blades can get expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's $14.95 for a box of 20. So, you know, it's less than $1 a haircut. So kind of cost of doing business.
Catch us up on what you're doing right now.
So I'm crossing over in the undercut here. You can see I've only got 1 or 2 sections left. Look at that beautiful texture. That's what I love to see. And again, I can promise you won't see this on too many mannequins if you go this short. You have to work with pivot point mannequins to get that kind of response. I've done a short, flat graduation using diagonal back sections from the hairline and a much more open, flat blade. So there's a lot of texture here. You know, and since the hair is short, I'm not worried about roughing it up a little bit. I kind of want to rough it up a little bit to get that beautiful texture out of it. So you can see the undercut complete here. I want to take you over to some of the other mannequins that I practiced on yesterday. This is another Diane.
Wayne says you're looking good.
Yeah. You can see she's got the same undercut as what we're just doing there for you. But in this case, I did more of a round disconnected top, which I'm going to do a variation on that today. So I'll show you how to do this kind of true round kind of pixie shape where the roundness disconnects from the undercut all the way around, and then we can create lots of texture and separation by use of the razor and dry scissor cutting. Here, this girl's not totally done. I want to show you a little bonus after I get this wet cut in. I'm going to do some dry cutting. But here you can see on, I believe that's Elise. Elise also has the same undercut. But her top was cut in a triangular way, almost like a graduated bob from the back, disconnected and hanging over. Top is still a little heavy, and I wanted to save that for you guys. So at the end, I'm going to do some dry cutting here on Elise to just customize that a tiny bit more. All right, let's get back to Diane. We've got our undercut done. Really happy with that. Now we're going to move to the top. So we're going to drop down this top here. And you'll notice if you're just joining us, I pre-sectioned off a horseshoe below the round of the head. You know, and again, how would I judge that? I like to use my comb. And you see how the comb goes all the way around below the round of the head? That would dip down in the back because the way the head shape changes. And this is super important, you know, for me with this shape, because I wanted enough hair over the top to have a lot more options. So that was one of the lessons that we talked about in the beginning of the video here, was how to determine where to section off. Going to dampen this hair down because I always work with damp hair with the razor. I don't particularly like very dry razor cutting. I find that it can pull the hair and hurt the client, even if you get a great result. For me, especially with this razor, dry razoring can kind of pull. And I've had clients feel uncomfortable with that. So I prefer to keep the hair damp. Okay, simply now, I've dropped down the front of the horseshoe. Now I'm going to visually section off above the round of the head, here. I'm going to push that out of the way. We're going to save that for the next stage. I'm going to use some of my small M clips to hold it out of the way. And now I'm going to section off above the round of the head. Let me turn her around to you guys. Right here. A little bit high. Let's go a scooch lower. A little bit high. Not me, the hair.
What are you looking for exactly as your...
So I'm looking at the head shape because I want to have the hair from the undercut to above the round of the head sectioned off out of the way. Because I'm going to use that. I'm going to cut through the center here, and then I'm going to come in and cut these. Okay, so I feel like I've got a good amount of density there. And I'm sectioning those parts of the horseshoe back and out of the way, as you can see here.
Katie was wondering about, does razoring split the ends and make it frizzy? And Jeremy Hickson says hello.
It can. It depends on the hair, and it depends on how you use the razor. The scissor can do those things too. And so can bleach, and so can hairspray. It's really all about how you use
flat
things.
irons.
Yeah, anything can damage the hair. Hot water can damage the hair. It really, for me, comes down to you and how you use it, how sharp it is. I'd say that's the main reason why people do not have success with razor cutting, is they don't use a sharp enough blade. So the thing with this particular razor is the blade is sharper than anything you can cut hair with. Sharper than even your sharpest pair of scissors, but only for one haircut. All right, so you can see here I've got this center panel right down the center, and we're going to start off, going to reduce some of the weight first here. This hair was cut originally in a bob shape. This is what I would do in a class. I would take this to a nice bob, and then we'd go into a shorter haircut. We try to get as much preservation out of these as possible. So the last haircut was an A-line bob, and now we're going into a shorter haircut, so I've got plenty at the front to work with. I'm putting my fingers on the bridge of the nose, and I'm going to pre-lighten the hair first, which is something I really like to do when I want movement and lightness in the hair. So you can see I just went in with the razor, like a key in a lock, and I took out about 30% of the bulk. Now I'm going to come in and start to establish my outline, or my bang. I'm going to do this with a totally different type of razor cutting. I'm going to do edge cutting with an open blade. So now that the hair is longer, and also going to be more visible front and center, cutting with the edge from the side of the hair like that is the way to keep the most integrity and health to the hair. So it's called edge cutting, and we do it from the side of the hair, so you're not scraping that cuticle at all. On the underneath, in the undercut, I was way more aggressive than that because it was short hair and I wanted it to be really, really broken down and textured. Now we're going right in front of the face, and we're taking a slightly different. So again, with the razor, it's how you use it. Getting the balance just the way I want it here. Now continuing through.
Angela is here with us, and she's excited to take your class in Chicago.
Awesome. Yes, I'll be at the ABS show doing innovative cutting, which is a half-a-day class at the ABS show focused on, just kind of the progressions that haircutting has gone through. We've had so many great founders from the 40s, the 50s, even the 1920s, and that's led us up to where we are today. And to me, that's what innovative haircutting is. It's about learning from the past and moving to the future. A lot of the razor cutting that I'm showing you here was originally really popular in the 20s, and then it was reinvented in the early 90s by some of our friends at Bumble and Bumble, Michael Gordon and his crew. And then, hopefully we're still keeping it alive in a fun, modern way. Third horizontal section, right down the center of the head. Each time I pre-lighten the hair, that's kind of like layering it. Even though I'm holding this at a very low elevation, it's not going to be solid and overly blunt. Coming back through with open edge cutting. Again, all that language and that terminology, you can go back at any time to our previous videos, and there's quite a few. And not just myself, but we have over 200 videos in our collection, but I've probably done a good 15 razor cutting ones where we go through a lot of that stuff. Okay, now that I'm getting to the top of the head, I don't want this to get too long, so for the first time I'm going to start elevating a little bit more. Still pre-lightening, using what I call slicing. Now I'm even going to use a little bit of tipping here to get even a little more lightness into this long hair. Then I'm going to come in and with an open edge stroke, take off the remaining hair.
Tammy was wondering if you can recap that class. Where exactly can she find you in Chicago?
On Sunday morning and Monday morning at the ABS show. That's the big Midwest beauty show in Chicago. I've got 2 half-day classes, one on Sunday, one on Monday. You have to go to the ABS website, and you can probably just search my name and it'll tell you what classes are available and what times and so forth. Removing weight. And if you ever want to know what classes we have going on at Hairbrained at any time, you can visit hairbrained.pro and look under our event section. I try to do at least one kind of independent hands-on class a month. I just did one in Denver. We've got one this weekend coming up. If anyone's in the LA area, Julian Perlingiro and myself are doing our famous scissor versus razor class, which I think you guys might enjoy. It's about comparing and contrasting and figuring out the similarities and the differences of scissor and razor cutting. One's not better than the other. They're just slightly different, and you can use them in slightly different ways. You can also use them in very similar ways. Now, that's a 2-day class, and it's going to be happening in downtown LA this weekend, Sunday and Monday. Also, if you're in the LA area and you want to come hang out with us, Sunday night at the Ace Hotel in downtown LA, we're having a meetup. That just means come hang out, say hello to your fellow craft hairdressers in the community, and have a great time. Ace Hotel starting at 8 o'clock on Sunday night. Okay, so that's that center panel, which really encompasses, the beginning of the bang. You can see it gives that beautiful separation just naturally. Now we've got these 2 side panels of the horseshoe that I dropped out. We're going to drop those down. And again, let's come back here for a second, Cal. So this Diane was cut in a very similar way, just so you can see what I've done. I did the undercut. I just did the center. That's what I've just shown you. Now I'm going to go into this area. And, oh, my bad. Now I'm going to go into this area here. And there's a lot of, if you wanted a longer haircut, you could cover all this. It all depends on how you angle it from here on in, which I'm about to show you guys now. So we're going to be doing a variation of this pixie shape. So as I come in here, I decide when I take my section diagonal and I come into this area, I bring that forward, and I decide where I want my length to be based on my finger angle. I'm going to hold the hair down and forward, and I'm going to put my fingers at about a diagonal angle because I don't want that back to end up too long. So again, following through from the line of the bang, curving around the face. I didn't take too much weight out of that first section because I need to have some definition there to hold up the shape. But as I move into the shape here, I can start to pre-lighten again. That's just sticking the blade through the hair, taking out 20 or 30% of the weight, and now continuing. And you can see that starting to fall around the face, just like it does on the mannequin there. On my Diane, these guys, they're sisters. They're actually twins. Come through. You can take the section a little bit thicker here, just judging it visually. Going to hold that hair down. Going to start to lift a little bit, again, so that the hair doesn't get too long internally. Pre-lighten the hair. Pre-lighten. Now, you don't always have to do that. If you feel the hair is maybe too fine, then you skip the pre-lightening. Having practiced many times on this mannequin and knowing the density of the hair, I know how much to take out.
Angela was wondering if the class she'll be in Chicago will be taped if she wanted to go back and watch it. Hey, Marcus.
Definitely to a certain degree, everything that we do is available. So I don't know if that specific one will be taped, but, anything that I'm teaching, has been available on Facebook Lives. We've got another big project coming up soon that you guys will be super excited to see involving education. So, great question. Very much of the moment, as we know that it's hard for people to get everywhere they need to be. So our goal is to bring the education to you. So just keep your eyes peeled for big announcements coming from Hairbrained. Okay, so you can see that now working around, rounding through. And again, if you want to get another look here, Kelly, this is the same shape. It had a little more weight taken out, which I'll do on the wet mannequin in just a minute. First, you kind of got to get the outline and the shape in, and then I can go back with tipping and remove even more weight. Okay, now we want to do the same on this side. Always easier said than done. So I want to come back here to get a reference point. And I use the body. So I bring my fingers around, and my angle is from the bridge of the nose to the cheekbone, pointing through. So as I come around here, I'm going to try to use a very similar point. Bridge of the nose to the cheekbone, coming through. Now I want to feel for balance. That feels pretty good. All right, let me get into a good angle here for you, Cal.
Awesome.
Perhaps we should go right here. How's that? Magic?
Absolutely.
Sections diagonal back. Working the same way. You will notice the hand position has changed and the part of the blade that I'm using has changed. Now I'm using what's called the heel of the razor or the back of the razor.
you're getting into your sections there, Delilah was wondering about what your input is on razoring fine hair. What are some do's and don'ts?
I think it's fine to razor fine hair.
What are some best practices?
It's all about pressure and how much weight you take away. So now this particular haircut, I'm being pretty aggressive, no doubt. It's a short haircut. Diane's got a good head of hair, but I could be very, very gentle. Let me just show you an example here. I can cut with a razor without really taking a lot of weight out. But what it does is it does rough up the ends a little bit. So sometimes cutting fine hair with what we call a short or closed edge stroke can give it a lot of body. Here I'm using the razor maybe a little bit more aggressively to take more weight out, using slicing, tipping, and a much more open stroke. But again, it's about you and how you use the tool. You can use bleach to just lift the hair a little bit and keep it very healthy, or you can use bleach to really, do incredibly good things or incredibly bad things. It's about you. And again, back to the original point of all this, that's why you need to practice, because you never know what you can and can't do and what is and isn't going to work until you practice. And that's one of the reasons why we love mannequins, especially as hair cutters and colorists. This one's great for color already because it's pre-lightened. You can try different tones and get different effects without having to worry about pre-lightening the hair. Okay, so the front of the shape is in. Now we need to move into the back. So I'm going to take out the back of the horseshoe, drop that down. Again, for reference, this is the family of shape we're working on. You can still see my wet shape's a little bit heavier than my dry shape because there's another phase I need to go through here called tipping, or maybe even dry cutting with the scissor, whatever you prefer. But the same idea is there. Now we're going to come into the back to continue this.
Nanette says hello. Thanks for joining us, Nanette.
Hi, Nanette. Always a pleasure to have your positive vibes with us. Okay, so I've got a point where I just ended up, and I can lift this out and I can look at that as a reference. So now I'm in the back of the horseshoe, again, just taking simple diagonal sections. Let me get into position here, Cal, so you can see everything. Mm-hmm. Now I can lift this up, and I can use some reference. I'm changing the direction. The last time it was cut here. If I pull it that far forward, it's going to be too heavy in the back. So I take the top of the same guide, and I start to pull it in a different direction. Again, very edgy here, meaning the angle of the razor is on the edge. Keeping that hair damp, be very responsive to the way the hair feels with the blade, just as you would be with color. You really have to be attuned to how that hair is reacting. Again, open edge stroke, working my way through. You can see there's obviously a significant disconnection from the undercut. Combing that down, drawing it off a little bit so I can see the movement. Still going to need a little bit of weight taken out to make it seamless and diffuse, but let's get the excess length off first, and then I'm going to take you guys through probably one of the most fun things you can do with the razor, which is called tipping. Great way to remove weight in a beautiful, strategic way. So really getting in the rest of the perimeter here, and then we'll move to the next stage. Just going to cross the center, and then I'll come back across the opposite way. So you can see I can even pick up all that hair from the front. Pick it up, lift it up, and follow it through. So for those of you just joining us, we are here for the Professionals Who Practice number 5 in the series of 6. Super excited about our next guest. Next month it's going to be Sophie Pock, who's an incredible barber. You might know her as Stay Gold. She was a guest recently with on Hairbrained Conversations, which is our weekly podcast, led by Gordon Miller. Although I want to do some of those, Gordon. Remember, I get to do some interviews too. But he's been doing them all. And recently we had Sophie Pock just this week. She's a fantastic barber. And while we're at ABS in Chicago, we're going to do some men's cutting for the Professionals Who Practice series. So tune in for that. That's going to be at the end of the month on Saturday. What's the date, Courtney? April 28th or 9th? You'll see promos. Just look out for them. It's like the last Saturday of the month. So you can see I'm moving into the second side in the same way. I came in, I picked up the hair from the front, I started to direct it back, and I started to create that overcut, the hair that falls over the undercut. I know in general it's a little bit heavy, but you kind of have to get that in first, especially if you want a lot of texture, because if I cut it all a little bit shorter right now, I won't have as much variation in length when I come in to do my next stage, which is called tipping. And that is what really will give it that beautiful razored variation in texture and length. It is a little heavy here though, so I will, generally on a good mannequin, like a pivot point mannequin, the crown is dense because there's a good amount of hair here, so you may need to do some it's a good place to practice your pre-lightening. Just about to cross over the center. You can see there's just a little bit of hair. You can see the rounded shape dropping over. Those of you that are familiar with classic hair cutting techniques, you'll know things like the firefly, the GG, the wedge. I mean, for me, those haircuts never went away. I just started to do them in a more shattered way, because I felt that's what made them sexier, more modern. And more important than that, that's what I just liked from my eye. So yeah, you could do them with the scissor, you could do them with the razor. Just lighten them up and make them more contemporary. Okay, so all the technical basics of the shape are in. So I should have a nice rounded shape over an undercut. It's very Linda Evangelista from the 90s, which I love. And you could leave it a little heavier like that. I like that as well. Here's a lighter version where I went in and I went stronger with the weight removal and made it a little bit slimmer. But you could leave it definitely heavier. It's up to you, the client, the type of hair. This would actually, even to me, it looks great wavy. But I do want to show you something. We've got time. Yeah, we're doing great on time. I'm going to show you two more things here. I'm going to show you tipping here, which is a technique you can use on any haircut to remove weight. And then we're going to do some dry scissor cutting on Elise back here. All right, who's ready for tipping?
I am.
All right. So I'm going to come in now, very simple. I'm just going to take horizontal sections. I'm going to hold them out and down from the head, and with the front tip corner of the blade in a very, very fluid motion on that last 1 to 2 inches of hair, I'm going to glide over it very, very lightly. Pressure is very, very gentle, and I'm weaving the blade without making the hair any shorter, but I am removing bulk and weight. You see that? Very seamless, beautiful. Similar to deep point cutting. So, again, there's something for everyone. I realize that not everyone in the world likes razor cutting. I think that's fine. Just whatever you do like, figure out your ways to do it and do it really well. It's like I don't do color. It's just something I like talking about it because it's great for analogies, but I didn't like doing it. So you find what works for you. And one of the best ways to do that is to practice. I came originally from the first 10 years of my career from Vidal Sassoon, and we certainly didn't like razors at Vidal Sassoon. It's kind of against the philosophy. But when I left Sassoon, I did want to kind of break some of the rules that I'd learned. So I got some mannequins and I started playing around. I did some crazy things that didn't maybe work out that well, but I did a lot of things that did work out well. And it started to kind of inform me into how I do hair. Okay, back to the tipping technique. Horizontally, bring all this hair forward, elevating a little bit more here. As the hair gets longer, I go maybe about 2 inches deep into the hair, weaving through. It's got to be really consistent. This is all about making your texture consistent. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Come back over here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That rhythm, those that take classes with me know what I mean because I'm always counting. I'm not, particularly obsessive about anything, but I find that when you're really consistent with your razoring and your hair cutting, it makes a big difference. Working through. Those last 2 inches of the hair. I'll stop at this point and switch around to the back because I've got all this hair directed where I want it. But let's look at the effect. Removing that weight has created. I've put a whole other subset of invisible layers within the shape. So I had a shape in already. It was kind of chunky. And as I said, that could be nice. It could be a nice effect.
Nanette was a fan of the chunky.
Yeah, no, I like the chunky. So as I said, you could stop there. You could do all kinds of different things. I really wanted to show you guys tipping because it's really such an important technique that you could use in so many ways. But you can, it's up to you and your eye, and most of all your client, you know. They're going to be pretty important, understanding what type of texture and what kind of effect they like. So tipping adds this invisible, you know, subset of layers to the hair. And you can see it's truly invisible when it's done well. See, it's gone. You don't even see it at all. It's easier said than done because you have to have what we call a perfect stroke. And you can only do it from the fingertips. Sometimes with razor cutting, we cut from the wrist and the arm. That would be really not feasible for this technique. You have to watch just the fingertips here, like a butterfly, really gentle. Really gentle. Coming through here. Now if I want to take this one step further, which I did here, I wanted to show you guys a lot of weight removal here. So I'm going to show you exactly what I did next. I did what I call backhand razor cutting, which is one of those times where you can actually elevate the hair more, and we all know more elevation means lighter, and then you bring the razor backhand and you can slice up into the hair. It doesn't need much because I've got a lot of the weight out, but this will give a nice final separation to these longer lengths of hair. And sometimes it can be nice in here as well. Obviously a lot of skill and dexterity I think goes into great razor cutting. I'd like to believe that. And that all comes from practice. Okay, so what I did with this haircut, when I got to this stage, I took her, and here she is, and first I did a little bit of hand drying, where I really just took my hand like this, and I scrub dried. I wanted a light kind of styling product, so I used one of my favorites, which is the Blow Dry Primer from my friends and supporters at Davinez, the Your Hair Assistant line designed by Angelo Seminara, one of the most talented hairdressers in the world. It's one of my favorite products out there. I'm a lucky hairdresser because I get to use all the best products. And this is one of my favorites, the Your Hair Assistant Blow Dry Primer. And then I scrub dried, and I did a little bit of wrap drying. Very, very lightly. I didn't want to overly straighten the hair. I wanted to keep some movement in it. Then I switched to the scissor, and I started to do, I'll do a little bit. I don't think it needs much more here, but I combed it all down, and I did some dry cutting, slicing, and channeling. Now I'm going to show you how to do that on this second mannequin that I prepared for you, because she still needs a little bit more. So we were talking about undercuts today. You can see Elise has a very similar undercut to Diane. Very similar, right below the round of the head, razored into. Elise is great because as a mannequin color-wise, she comes with a mixture of brown and blonde. So that can be really fun for color and for different things. Now you can see what I did differently here, and I'll demonstrate it for you a little bit. I won't do it on dry hair, but I took diagonal sections on this shape. I came through the back, and I used that same idea of bias razoring, and I over-directed all that hair.
Back to the same point?
It moved around a little bit because it would have been too heavy. So you can see I moved probably 3 times. Step back a little, Cal. 1, 2, 3. So it's more triangular. If I brought it all the way back, the front would be a little gothic, which could be cool, or it could be creepy, or it could be creepy cool. All right, so the way I want to remove weight is in a similar way. I'm going to take diagonal sections. I'm going to comb them over the back. Turn this around, make sure you guys can see. And I'm going to channel into the ends, or slice into the ends, between the undercut and the overcut layering disconnection. Comb it back and down. And you can kind of still see there's a little bit of a line there. I want to go through it gently, opening and closing without closing all the way, until that starts to become more seamless with the hair underneath it. It'll still keep all the length, but it'll create more texture and separation, and remove bulk as it starts to fall forward. Again, this is all optional. If you like the density of the hair, you might be able to leave it just as it is. Razor cuts don't have to be overly thin, and neither do scissor cuts. Very often, my technique has evolved to be a little bit of both. I like a nice mixture and variety in what I do. Comb that hair back and over. Now, don't press it all the way flat to the scalp. I'm really just cutting through that top page, that top layer of hair.
So you're not using her at the round of her head in any way?
Yes, I am, actually. Here. So I'm working with the curve of the head, but I'm not pushing the scissor completely against it. I mean, unless the hair was dramatically thick, I don't need to do quite that. It actually looks like a beautiful firefly variation when you do this, which I love. I love that even though you can cut something in a completely different way, you can still kind of see some of the classics in it. That's why they're classics, because they're timeless. Now you can see as that starts to go forward, I kept my shape, but I added more bend and weight removal. Now let's do the same thing on this side, which is really heavy. I'm going to separate it in two because it would be too much hair for me. So what I would recommend is if you have a side parting, match basically to the side parting on this side. Try to not twist that up too much. Now I've got the same amount of hair. And again, down and back and slicing into it. Let's turn around this way, Kel. You'll get a better angle. There you go. Opening and closing without closing all the way. Very gentle pressure, not pushing all the way through to the scalp, almost lifting the newer pieces of hair. Very consistent and methodical in it, always looking and making sure, in this case, there's no weight line. Continuing, back, let it fall in. It actually works really nice with the color here because as I cut the underneath shorter with the undercut, it exposed more of the darker hair. And now you can see more of Elise's blonde highlights. Comes that way pre-colored. It's a mixture of different colors, which is cool.
Timothy's nervous about her ears.
Don't worry about these things. That's another great thing about mannequins. But yeah, if it's a person, what you can do is reach in and hold the ear down. So you take this finger, you bend the ear down, and you can come in. That's, obviously super important. The last thing we want to do is injure anyone. You can see how that starts to free that up. A good way to tell is by just lifting and seeing if it's got support. Now I've got the top hair left, and this hair falls in a very specific way. It kind of falls this way, so I'm going to change my sectioning, and I'm going to let it fall where it will naturally. And now I'm going to do some slicing on the surface of the hair this way. Just lifting those top hairs, letting the underneath drop away. Opening and closing without closing all the way. And longer towards the front. I still want to keep a sense of weight there. One more section. Lift, let the underneath drop away. Open and close. Never going higher than the round of the head and each time going a little bit lower. Well, that's really up to you.
Could you get the same effect using a razor? Or is a scissor preferred?
I could have done more deep slicing and tipping on this when it was wet. So yes, there's a million ways to mix up your techniques. I'm at a place right now where I really enjoy the combination of scissor and razor. I use the razor to get a beautiful kind of sketch in of the balanced shape that I want in a very soft way. And then after I dry the hair, whether it be curly or smoother, I then use the scissor to define it. So I think, for a while, since I'm going to get all hair nerdy now, for a while we were doing the opposite. We were putting in perfect shapes with the scissor, as strong and clean as we possibly could, and then really breaking them up. I feel for the other. I put in a soft, loose shape, and then after it's dry, I kind of start to define it. I feel like that's enough, because I do want to keep a sense of weight in her hair. So I've decided that probably be enough for that. I'm going to come back over here, grab some product. I'm going to work a little bit with the Your Hair Assistant Defining Mist. Just a beautiful shine spray that's not oily. This one's also from Davines. Puts a beautiful shine, yet still keeps separation and texture in the hair. which to me is amazing because usually shine sprays collapse the hair. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the Perfecting Hairspray for just a light hold on this texture. Bring that across. Happy with that. Okay, so this was Diane, who we just demonstrated through the whole time there. Then I wanted to show you some tipping and slicing. This is drawing off nice curly, which I really quite like as a variation. We can definitely add a little bit. We'll do a little natural styling here. We'll add a little bit of the the blow dry primer. And I'll show you guys one last thing here. Since we styled both those girls pretty straight, let's come in. Let's use our YS Park Sock Diffuser, which is my favorite for hand styling. And what I love with this is you just slip it right over the dry, right over the nozzle. So I don't lose my nozzle. Nobody wants to lose their nozzle, right? Turn it on. Keep the airflow going downward. And just kind of pinch that hair where you want it. So you can see what's happening here is it's not blowing that hair around at all. It's just drying the product into the hair in a very natural way. And it's very easy since the nozzle's on for me to direct the air exactly where I want it. Pinch and lift. I'm not afraid to touch it. You know, again, I do want some life in the hair. And that the blow dry primer gives a little hold. So it'll dry with a little bit of hold, and then I'll use some oil spray to break it up. A nice juxtaposition or variation to what we did here. A very straight version and a very textured version. Almost dry, drying quickly.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for your support, Gerard. Everyone's loving your styles this afternoon.
What's that now?
Everyone's loving your haircuts this afternoon.
Thanks, guys. I'll tell you, you know what? All the support that we get from our incredible community around the world, with our events, with our education, I have to say I'm the happiest, luckiest hairdresser in the world. I get to do what I love with people that I love, and every time you guys support me, it makes all the difference in the world. Stay tuned for the next big thing that we're going to do, because I really think you guys are going to appreciate it. We're kind of taking our whole approach to education to the next level, and we want you guys to really be there for it. So stay tuned on Hairbrained_official on Instagram. Keep following us on Facebook. And of course, you can follow me, Gerard Scarpaci, on Instagram as well. So I make a lot of sneaky announcements there. So maybe there'll be the announcement there. We'll see.
Oh, Nanette, let me know what you mean by boots. And Delilah, yes, that is a sock diffuser available at hairbrained.pro.
Yeah, this is the YS Park Ion Diffuser. All the tools that I use today. This is my favorite comb for razoring. It's the Comb Bang Tough 20. I like it because it's rigid when I'm razoring. I also use
Thanks for your support, Liz.
Kuho scissors, which is a brand that we're really working on developing tools with. I used our YS Park clips, our Domino's products from our partners there. Let's get these ladies all together here for a final bow. I think these tripods are so good they could probably do a bow, right? I'll get up here in the middle.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your support, guys. Appreciate it. See you next time for the Professionals Who Practice series at the end of the month with Sophie Pop.